Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your time and attention. This is our very first monthly BrandBlitz live webinar from AmberTech. Now, why are we doing this? The reason we're doing this is because AmberTech represents a lot of different brands here in Australia and in New Zealand across audio, unified comms, vision, AV over IP, and particularly around the time of ISE and around Infocom and around Integrate, a lot of our suppliers, they use that time to make new announcements about new features in firmware, new products and so forth, as they do all throughout the year. And it's physically impossible for myself and for Ruth to make it around to each and every single one of our, the several hundred consultants and universities and designers out there who design with these tools. And so we picked this format of live streaming to YouTube, hopefully as a way to update you in a really succinct but thorough way that's easy for you guys to look at later on. If you want to, you can scroll back or listen on the train on the way home or whatnot. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to kick off with some updates that Wolfvision gave at ISE2024 just last month. They demonstrated two very cool pieces of tech. So the first one, the visualizer, the VZ-2.UHD, it adds to their existing range of visualizers. And as many of you already know, Wolfvision visualizers are pretty much ubiquitous through universities and educational institutions. The VZ3 Neo and VZ8 Neo are pretty much the gold standard in that regard. The VZ-2.UHD sits below those slightly feature-wise, but doesn't sacrifice too much in the way of video quality. It's still a 4K native CCD on board with 12 by optical and 2x digital zoom, so total 24 times zoom. Still able to be remotely managed with the vSolution Link Pro software, which can also, of course, help to provision and troubleshoot and manage the sign-up range as well. And like all the other Wolfvision visualizers, it has a 5-year warranty on it. The little camera on top of the VZ-2.UHD can be rotated around by 192 degrees. Now that allows it to be used as a webcam as well as a document camera. The controls on the top, there's no preview monitor as there is on the VZ3 and the VZ8 Neo, but there's a little TFT touch screen on the top with I think only 6 buttons. It's dead simple. Anybody should be able to just walk up and use it without any training. Just basic zoom controls, luminance and input select. Connectivity, everything you would expect to find on a 4K source, HDMI, USB 3, USB 2 for connecting straight to a computer, and the LAN port for remote control and management. It's worth noting that the VZ-2.UHD doesn't do RTMP streaming as the VZ3 and VZ8s do. But there is this very cool little interactive touchscreen application for Android-based IFPDs, which allows that app to run, and you don't need to use up an output on the VZ-2.UHD or muck around with any extra splitting hardware or matrix switching or anything. The video from the VZ-2.UHD can be displayed directly on the IFPD through the network, alongside the user interface. This is a little 20-second clip that I took from ISE, and Michael from Wolfvision can demonstrate it.
If you open it, you will get the picture of the visualizer alongside with the controls for the visualizer itself. If it is a touch screen that you have, you will also be able to control the picture on the main functions over zoom in and zoom out. In addition to this, it also enables the possibility to annotate over the picture if you would like to do that.
Okay, so as well as the VZ-2.UHD, WolfVision demonstrated their QSYS Core integration into their Synap Pro and Synap Core Pro. Now, QSYS Core, vCore, beg your pardon, QSYS vCore allows all of the QSYS control interfaces and backend to run on your own metal, on your own hardware. Notwithstanding any audio or video signals, that's already well and truly handled by the Synap hardware already. But as per normal, any integrator can build a normal QSYS user interface and then deploy it onto the Synap. And that allows the Synap itself, the Synapse interface, to access that user control interface as if it was any other QSYS touchscreen. And of course, you could put a QSYS touchscreen in the room as well, and that QSYS touchscreen will integrate and communicate with the Synap Pro or Core Pro, just like it would a hardware QSYS Core. Fabian from Wolfvision, this is again from ISE2024. Can it explain it?
I'm going to introduce you to QSYS vCore running directly on our Synap hardware.
Thank you, Jonathan. As Jonathan mentioned already, a vCore is directly running on the Synap. So we are sharing our hardware, but both systems are running completely independent. Therefore, we use our LAN 2 Ethernet port for the vCore, so you can also separate the networks if needed to have an own room management network and your Synap network. As you can see here, the interface of the vCore can be directly called on the Synap as the vCore is running on the device. And you can have control over your room peripheral devices such as lights, shades, or maybe screens, for example. Just to have an easy access to start your presentation in a perfect setup as you want to have it.
So yeah, Wolfvision, very busy. It's worth mentioning that next month's BrandBlitz update, we'll have some more news from Wolfvision as well. They've been very busy. Very busy guys are also Wyrestorm. I tell you what, Wyrestorm have a really strong track record of bringing out new products, new updates, refreshing their range on a very, very regular basis. At ISE this year, they brought out some new in-wall encoder for the Network HD 100-200 series, some beastly seamless matrix HDMI switches, seamless switches, and some HD-based T3 extenders. The NHD 120 IWTX is effectively the same Network HD 100 series transmitter that's been in the market for a little while in a wall plate form factor, but worth mentioning the difference between any normal NHD 100 series encoder is the addition of the LAN port on the front, which, apart from ad hoc HDMI connections, can allow anyone to BYOD, plug in by HDMI, access the room's hardware. But if it's a situation where you don't want, well, the facility doesn't want that casual user on their Wi-Fi network, then this LAN port can be provisioned so that a casual user can just simply plug in with an Ethernet cable and access the network, and which of course can be managed in all the normal ways, like any network administrator is going to have their rules and their policies and adopt those. Network HD 100-200 series, like all of the Network HD series, is found commonly in very, very secure facilities like courtrooms, government buildings, particularly through the US. Wyrestorm is absolutely ubiquitous in government buildings, and the thing that allows that to happen is the security that's built into it. All of the streams going to and fro are completely encrypted across the whole Network HD range. So the Network HD 100-200 series is optimized for low bandwidth, H.264, fairly high, H.264, 265, highly compressed video over IP, AV over IP on a standard gigabit network. So you probably choose the 100-200 series for static displays up to 4K. But for lots of movement, if you want to run sports or IMAG, like live camera to screen or something like that, you probably need to be considering the 500 or the 600 series, which use the 600 series is effectively uncompressed. The 500 series uses JPEG 2000 compression, but still with very, very high picture quality. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, so the Network HD Touch application for iPad or Android allows the end user, maybe it's a bar manager or whoever it is, to easily drag and drop sources that appear on the bottom of the screen to the displays, the sinks, I suppose, the receivers, and that can be done in either discrete displays. If you say, once again, a sports bar might have 6 screens. One screen is AFL, one's NRL, cricket, horse racing, etc. It just allows the owner of that system to turn everything on at once simply and select sources simply. And it can also be used to create video walls. So if you have a very large 4K display and you want to have multi-view, once again, the 100-200 series, or the whole Network HD range is capable of that. So the HDMI switches that they announced, Wyrestorm announced at ISE, the 1007 HYB, this thing's a beast. There's a lot of dot points there and a lot of specifications and so forth, but I'll just talk you through the main ones. 7 HDMI ins, 1 HD base T3 input, so we're talking 4K 60, 444, virtually uncompressed. And it can also be NHD, Network HD, 500 series receiver and transmitter as well. So it can coexist with other Network HD endpoints on the same network. On the output side, stereo lines, 2 HD base T3 outputs, 4 HDMIs, 4x4 Dante, so 4 ins, 4 outs Dante, and also 4 25-watt loudspeaker channels. So you're probably not going to be running the office Christmas party off 4 25-watt loudspeaker channels, but that should be enough to provide basic playback and speech reinforcement to a fairly large meeting room. But if you need to add an amplifier and some extra amplifier power and loudspeakers, you've got those Dante outputs, you've got those line outputs and so forth. We've got 2 USB host connections, so we can run in-room PCs, and both those PCs can access the peripherals, the cameras, mice, etc. On the USB device ports. Sigma Cloud, that last point there, Sigma Cloud, which perhaps I'll talk a little bit more about next month, because I know Wyrestorm are constantly adding new features. Sigma Cloud is Wyrestorm's remote cloud management platform, which allows users or system integrators, system managers to remotely and in a single unified interface manage all the Wyrestorm devices, such as the 1007 or all of the Network HD, NHD devices on a network. So yeah, the Sigma Cloud is definitely a very handy way to unify, manage, update, troubleshoot all of the Wyrestorm devices. I'm not going to run through this spaghetti junction diagram in great detail. It's really just there to illustrate the myriad of different sources that can be brought in: HD base T, HDMI, USB, USB-C, analog, Dante, NHD 500. There's a massive plethora of ins and outs that this thing can handle and matrix and manage and get in and out. The smaller guy, the MX0804 EDC, is very similar to the 1007, but it removes the functionality of HD base T and Network HD 500 series, and removes the 4 loudspeaker output channels. But you've still, just like the 1007, you've got seamless switching, like within 1 second, from any input to any output, because every single input and output has its own scaler. So if you're running very low resolution sources and you have a 4K screen, you can still expect seamless switching between any input and output, courtesy of all of those inbuilt scalers. The HT-based T3 extenders that Wyrestorm announced. So the transmitter being a wall plate form factor, and it's not just video and audio over HD-based T3. The SW120TX3 and RX3100, the transmitter and receiver pair, can carry USB 2 up to 300 megabits per second, which is going to allow you to pretty much run any kind of additional peripheral in addition to HDMI and USB-C. It's a switching transmitter, so you can have all these things connected, USB-C and HDMI, and switch between the two. And the USB host connection will follow along with that. So this allows us to get totally uncompressed 4K 60, 444 at 8-bit, over 100 meters of pretty good quality Cat cable from point to point. We can power the transmitter from the receiver. We can also drag all of the audio sources that are going to be embedded in such a HDMI stream, DTSX, Dolby Atmos, PCM, etc. But there's this other cool feature, which is a parallel and additional analog pass-through. So we can run, you'll see if I point to it here with my big fat green mouse, the line input here on the output on the receiver and input over here on the transmitter, that might be used for auxiliary audio, and you might have some extra background music, for example, coming off a phone or from another laptop or something like that, in addition to the playback source that's coming through your HDMI stream. And it's just a neat little extra feature that definitely come in handy. So LEA Professional, as an audio guy, I always like getting to the audio parts of these sorts of presentations. LEA announced 6 new models at ISE2024, all of which are half rack size, all of which are 4 channels. So you're going to find these behind screens, you're going to find them in high density, low space installations inside meeting rooms, etc. And they also announced a whole bunch of updates to their cloud platform, LEA Cloud, which is LEA's remote unified management interface. Happy to say that the 4-channel half-rack amps won a Best of Show award at ISE, courtesy of Sound and Video Contractor. The Connect Series half-rack amps are all 4 channels, and there are 6 models. So there's 3 power levels, and each one of those has a Dante and non-Dante variant, so that makes 6 models. Each of them are 4 channels. There's 30 watts, 60 watts per channel, or 120 watts per channel with Dante and non-Dante. Worth mentioning here also is the fact that any one channel, just like on the 8-channel amplifiers, you can pick any one channel and double its output and not sacrifice the other 3 channels. So you can still have your 3 channels running at, for argument's sake, 30 watts. Pick any one channel, and that channel can run your subwoofer, for example. There's always a bit of extra capacity built into the power supplies of LEA amps in order to provide, one selected channel with a bit more grunt. Cloud control is something I'll talk about in just a moment when I talk about the updates that LEA announced to their platform. In situations where there's no network connection, no RJ45 or Ethernet connection, pointing here with my big ugly green pointer, you'll see this little button which can turn on or off an inbuilt Wi-Fi access point into the amp. So if the amp has no other network connection, you can enable this, you can fire up this Wi-Fi access point, connect to it with your tablet or your laptop or your phone, and just run the browser, just log into it with the amp's IP address and configure the amp and provision it. You've got access to all of the settings of the amplifier just through the amp's inbuilt web interface. It's another neat, handy way to be able to deploy these amplifiers. If you have several amplifiers in a rack, but still no DHCP server or no other connection to a network, You can employ the Wi-Fi access point on just one. Let's say if we've got 8 amplifiers in a rack. You can enable the Wi-Fi access point on just one of those. Connect your laptop, your device to that, and then you can see all 8 amplifiers through one amplifier's web page. So one amplifier can be used to access all of the settings and everything of every other amp on the network. It just saves you from having to go around and turn the Wi-Fi access point on each and every single one, find the SSID, log into them. You can just do it once, and it's just one of those neat little convenience factors. LEA have a really good track record of really thinking these through from the installer's point of view and from the user's point of view. GPIO, enough GPIO that you're ever going to need on a small 4-channel amp. We can remotely trigger the amp on and off through one of those pins. One of those pins is a dedicated fault output if there's ever any faults, and we've got 4 GPIO pins that we can use to be triggered by or trigger external devices to do things. The Dante on-ramp feature is also on the 8-channel amps. It's pretty, let's imagine that only 2 of the analog inputs are being used to run all 4 channels of loudspeakers, because you can patch any input to any output. And that might mean you've got 2 analog inputs that are not being used. So what you can do is use those inputs to then jump onto your Dante network and send that audio off to any other Dante device. You may have just any old, let's say you might have another set of LEA Dante amplifiers. You can run that one input on one analog input on one of those amps and just cascade that through the Dante network to those amps, or indeed to any other Dante device. The same DSP that we know and love on the 8-channel amps is all built into the 4-channel amps as well. So 48 dB crossovers, full-blown 8 parametric EQs per channel, infinitely configurable RMS and peak limiters, where we can set attack and release and threshold for RMS and peak, and continuous load monitoring as well. So once we've established our setup, we know what our load parameters should be, and we can set a high and a low threshold. And if the amplifier detects that the load has drifted outside of either the high or the low, indicating perhaps a short or a blown speaker, we can use that to trigger a fault event, i.e. pull the one of the GPI pins down. And these faults also show up in the logs of the amplifier. So speaking of which, I'm going to jump actually 2 slides ahead to talk about that. If we have a fault situation, be it a blown speaker or a short, or even a completely cratered amplifier, this thing has just been absolutely thrashed or has even lost AC completely, we can still get logs off of that amp. These amps can report from the grave. The way they can do that is if they have a PoE connection, even though they don't require PoE for normal operation, if an amp has a PoE connection from the switch, and of course mains for running the amplifier, if the mains fails or the amp blows smoke and that PoE connection is still present, that module that's powered by PoE within the amplifier can still yield all of that operational data for post hoc analysis. It can still give you all of the fault logs. It can still tell you what's wrong with it, if it's overheated, or it spent 2 days being thrashed by a DJ and the loudspeakers have cooked and now there's a short on the line and the amp is overheated, so it's turned itself off. Even if it loses AC power, even for troubleshooting on a bench, there's no need to fire the thing up with mains. You can just give it PoE, wait for it to boot up, and you should be able to get all of those fault logs off of the amp. Now, if the amplifier is connected to an LEA Cloud account, we can now configure the cloud to send us SMS or email notifications of what's happened, which allows for the facility owner or the system manager or the integrator to proactively respond to fault events rather than wait for the customer to ring up or for someone to turn up in the room and realize that the amp has cratered itself. The user interface is pretty much the same between the web user interface or Sharkware or LEA Cloud. LEA Cloud allows us to do all of the same things that the local point-to-point connection of the software allows us to do. And another one of the important updates that LEA announced is the ability to perform firmware updates remotely through the cloud. Previously, firmware updates were only possible with the point-to-point connection physically in front of the amplifier. That's no longer the case. We can now deploy firmware over the cloud. So hopefully that is a situation that might prevent the need for system integrators to travel long distances to implement a new feature. So another company who's very busy on a regular basis is AVer, who, true to their track record, they do have a very consistent history of updating their conference cameras, the CAM series, as well as their stage tracking and professional AV cameras, their PTC and PTZ series. AVer announced Teams certification for the VB350, this guy here, the dual lens video bar at ISE2024. Well, in the time that I've been representing AVer as an employee of Amber, I've noticed that whenever AVer brings out a video bar in this range, and indeed the conference cameras, the CAM series, they will generally come to market and they'll be Zoom certified, and then a few months later, once Microsoft has finished their very stringent, very expensive evaluation procedure, AVer will announce Teams certification. It's a very, very consistent pattern that's been followed the last few years. So now we have 3 video bars and 3 cameras, all of which are Teams certified. And you can pretty well take it as given that Teams certification also implies Zoom certification. In the Pro AV range, the PTZ 310, very, very nice optics on that camera. And the Cam 550s and Cam 570s, which are very well targeted at meeting rooms and conference rooms. Some really, really nice tracking on all of those cameras. The tracking on the PTZ is more tailored and more configurable for stage and presenter tracking, or for picking out an individual in a crowd and hanging on to them and tracking them. The conference room cameras, the CAM series, the tracking is more stylized for someone sitting statically, or perhaps moving left and right across a PowerPoint presentation or something like that in a smaller room. They're different types of tracking, and they work very, very well. The MT300, man, I love this product. This is definitely one of my favorite products in the Amber stable. The MT300N is fairly diminutive little guy. It's a half rack width, and it can be deployed in a situation where you need automatic camera tracking, but you also might need situations where the user might want to just do their own vision mixing through the web interface itself. The new firmware updates to MT300 have brought a very, very usable web interface for the device for that sort of thing. I'm actually using the MT300 right now. You're actually being streamed via YouTube directly out of the MT300N. The MT300N is not going through a codec or anything else. It's going straight out of the back of the MT300N out to the internet, straight to YouTube. So on the input side here, we've got 3 HDMI inputs, 3 USBs. One of those USBs can be used as an USB audio input, and we've also got 3 NDI inputs as well. And we can mix and match those inputs depending on our application, and we can team the MT300 up with any ceiling tile on the market. Now, I'm using the Yamaha Odessia RMCG here in our training room here in Melbourne, and I've got it teamed up with the MT300. The user interface, as I mentioned before, has, if I grab my big ugly green mouse pointer again, currently we're in live mode. This is what you're seeing now, picture-in-picture in live mode, so to speak. But I will change to preset mode, or profile mode, as it were. So in this particular scenario, I've got 3 cameras. I've got a PTC 115 in front of me up here. I've got a Cam 550 to my right. And now that we're in this profile mode, I've set the MT300 to understand where the RMCG is pointing. And if I move around, you're going to see all 3 of these cameras track me. This is all configurable depending on your room size, the amount of inputs that you have, and so forth. And if everything goes well and the technological deities are smiling upon me, here we go. Now I'm back here. It's implementing the correct preset on the PTC 500 that I'm looking at you right there. So there you go. I'll just jump back to live mode there. Okay, well, that about wraps it up for today. Thank you for your time and attention. As I said, we plan to hold these webinars we're looking at for the last Thursday of every month, just to keep you updated in a really succinct, quick shot fashion. The updates and the tools that you can all use to implement your designs. If you want to go down the rabbit burrow of any more of these products, you need some more information. If you need to evaluate demo stock, we have facilities here in Melbourne and in Sydney. We can perhaps loan you items as we have them on hand. Feel free to contact myself or my good friend and colleague Ruth Jones, who looks after New South Wales, ACT and Queensland. But yeah, in the meantime, we'll see you around. Thanks very much.